We have a chasing alert for you tonight. A gunman holed himself up in a Panera Bread restaurant in Princeton, New Jersey. Schools on lockdown, state police, local police, FBI all responded. I was there this morning as things unfolded, got to talk to some people who were there on the ground as law enforcement responded to this potential threat.
We just were inside of the store and I saw the policeman with the guns pointed at Panera, and then they evacuated the whole block and we are outside since.
Our own Nate Rogers is in Princeton. He's got all the details. Nate, what do you got for us?
Bill, the suspect is now dead after a standoff that lasted some 6 hours as police worked to close off the area as well as negotiate with the man involved. Around 10 o'clock this morning, a man barricaded himself inside the Panera Bread restaurant on Nassau Street. The suspect was reportedly armed with a shotgun. Gunshots were fired at the scene. At least one state trooper fired his weapon.
It was a customer that we recognized, and they start swinging the gun and say, everyone get out.
Now, during the standoff, students at nearby schools were sheltered in place. Princeton students are on spring break this weekend. There were no other injuries reported. The FBI, state police, and the Attorney General's office continue to investigate this situation. In Princeton, I'm Nate Rogers for Chasing News.
Thank you, Nate. All right, you may have heard already another school shooting, this time in Maryland. 2 students are wounded, 1 is dead. Now, the good news here is the only person dead is the shooter after an armed security officer exchanged gunfire and ended the threat. That and a story out of Carteret, New Jersey, where there are reports that people are able to obtain firearms without the proper local background checks. Now, this, of course, speaks to the argument that we already have so many laws on the books. Maybe we need to do a better job of enforcing the laws we have before we start talking about new ones. To talk about all this, I've got an expert on guns and shooting. His name is Scott Bakken. He is the executive director of the New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Club. Scott, welcome to Chasing News.
Great to be back, Bill.
So let me ask you first about Carteret. For the average person to hear that the gun licenses were being given out without a proper background check, the average person recoils and says, hey, this is a real crisis. But you have an interesting perspective on it.
Sure, there's histrionics you hear about this, but nobody's saying that you can't purchase a gun from a dealer in New Jersey without a federal background check. So even if the state system fails, there's a federal check. So it's not like people are out there running around who haven't qualified through New Jersey's systems, which really points to the question, why do we even have a redundant system in New Jersey that is antiquated?
Do you think the discussion on armed school officers is going to take a lot of momentum on from what happened today where the armed security guard put down the shooter?
We hope so, but it seems like the script is already written on that. There are some people that just don't even want an armed resource officer in schools, which to me seems crazy. You know, we can talk about gun policy all day, but at the end of the day, if there's an emergency, you need someone who's able to stop that emergency. That's common sense.
Who knows how many lives were saved with
Absolutely.
That security officer in
Many.
Maryland. Got to leave it there, Scott. Thanks for being here. All right, let's bring in our A-plus panel to break this down. I'm joined by immigration attorney Afia Yunus, back with us. Good to see you, Afia. And Republican strategist Jeanette Hoffman. Always good to see you, Jeanette.
Thanks.
Laura Nanos is here. She is a writer for Law and Crime and an attorney. All right, Afia, I want to start with you. I see 2 things coming out of this. One, the armed school resource officer, this public safety officer, did his job, went in, engaged, ended the threat. That seems to speak to there is a value in having an armed guard in school. But then this video, take a look at this. This video went viral, and it's a sophomore in high school saying, really, the whole root problem here, the root cause is we just need to be nice to these people so they don't go and shoot up schools.
We're teenagers. You should say that you love your neighbor. You should be there for them. Sit with them at lunch. Tell them that you're their friend, that you're going to be there for them whenever they need you. Because just because they're already dealing with bullying at school enough, and they have their own problems at home, whether you know it or not, everybody does. And I don't see why it's so hard to be nice and care and love each other. Like, it's not hard.
I don't know if that was necessarily her message. Her message was, let's come from a place of love. That's the message that I got from her. And I think I agree. There is an underlying problem, which is a lack of connection between human beings nowadays. And I felt that that was her message.
Jeanette,
Yeah.
I hear that and I'm like, that sounds so nice in some fairy tale fantasy world. Here's the reality. You got a lot of sick people out there. They need help. But more importantly, let's forget about the stigma in mental health and let's start removing people from public situations. I mean, I want to know why the shooter in Parkland wasn't put away at some point, and they talked about doing it.
And that is a disgrace. That is certainly someone who slipped through the cracks, Bill. However, I think this woman does bring up a good point. What is the root cause of all these shootings? Why has our society become so violent? I think we need to bring character education back into the classroom and teach children how to interact with people and get off social media.
This idea of love, hugs, it sounds like some weird 60s rewind. To me, it sounds like we're going to be tougher. You know, we don't have kids don't have the coping skills. They're not learning how to overcome adversity, and they're taking it out. They're desensitized. I'm not blaming video games, but there's certainly this desensitizing going on with regard to violence and death. Yet at the same time, we're afraid of bumper stickers with pictures of guns.
Well, let me just say this. I don't really think that the idea of loving each other is outdated. I think that we should focus on what it will take to get people to have better connections. But I also think all of it needs to be done. We need to look into better security. We need to look into better mental health resources and monitoring.
To that point, very serious point, you cannot hug away a mental illness.
That's
you
right.
May, you may try to show all that love and sensitivity. If somebody needs serious help, you got to get them
absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Jeanette, and then
I would think you would give this woman credit for getting up there and talking about something other than gun control, talking about solutions to the problem that we have as interacting as human beings.
That's right. The problem is complex. The solution has to be complex.
The students are isolated, and that's why human connection can root out these mental health issues that students are having.
I did support the stand-up movement, the idea that people are going to go to these kids who are isolated, but there's a difference between mental illness and isolation. I think that at some point, you know, bullying is not going to cause somebody necessarily to go shoot up a school.
That's true, but
there's got to be some other disconnect.
Complex issue. It's a very complex issue.